All right, Kaylee, I got a question for you. Are you having a good time?
No.
What? Blink twice if you aren't.
Wow. Those 3 times.
Wow.
2.
Why aren't you having a good time? We're here to talk about a movie. This is like the best time ever.
Okay. I guess I'm having a good time.
She's mad. She's sending signals to you guys. Help her. Blink twice. Zoe Kravitz. I think it's her directorial debut. I didn't look, but I'm going to say it is. And she also co-wrote this as well. So this is her baby. And she does not make an appearance a lot of the times when actors turn directors. They like to at least make an appearance in their films. But,
sometimes, yeah.
No Zoe Kravitz in this one. But instead, we have our main character here. The only thing I've ever seen her in, since I'm a Star Wars nerd, this is all I know her from, is she's from Rise of Skywalker, as well as one of the other girls in this, Bix from Andor, is another girl in this movie.
Oh.
Anyways, sorry. But she meets this playboy billionaire played by Channing Tatum. And he invites her and her friend to come to his island that he bought because, billionaires can buy islands because that makes sense.
Right.
And they go to have a good time. But do they have a good time? Let's discuss. Okay, so there's so many people in this movie, it's kind of crazy. Like every freaking... I didn't know who was in this outside of Channing Tatum. So like every time someone popped up, there's not like a bunch of big names or anything. We're talking about like... we're Robert Downey Jr. and shit doesn't pop up in this movie.
No.
I'm not talking about anything like huge, but like...
But like Christian Slater.
Yeah, Christian Slater, Gina Davis, freaking Simon Rex. We've got, it's just like one after the other. Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah.
And, Kyle MacLachlan, which you already said.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, I didn't say it.
It's just like, oh, they're in this? Oh, they're in this?
Lots of people.
Yeah,
lots of
recognizable
faces.
So, I guess okay. So, I saw some reviews. I thought we turned that off. I guess we did.
Oh, no, you didn't hear it start?
I did. I mean, I heard it start. So, there's the air conditioning, everybody. Anyway, yeah, so we always do that where we think we turn it off. And it's like, no, I thought you turned it off. I thought you turned it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for the noise distortion now. Anyway, so, yeah. I think the thing to say about this movie is this is definitely geared towards, like, a female audience. I don't think that if you're a guy, you can't appreciate it. But if you are somebody who's typically like, I don't like feminist movies, then, yeah, this is definitely not going to be for you. I really enjoyed this a lot. I had a good time throughout. So I saw some reviews about this where they were talking about like how the first like 45 minutes of this movie just kind of is like plodding along and boring and nothing's happening. People just don't have an attention span anymore, and they don't know how movies build characters and situations. Like, the first 45 minutes of this movie is insanely important, and as important as the last 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So I just don't get that criticism at all. I don't know what they want in those first 45 minutes because it sets the stage so perfectly for what transpires, right? Like, everything, like, they're setting up a whole bunch of, like, little plot devices that are going to come up later, of course. And those are all done pretty well. But it's also just like everything's great, and how people get themselves into a situation like this, and there's a lot of like foreshadowing moments that you don't really know are foreshadowing moments. Some of them you do, some of them you don't, and when they happen later, you're like, oh, that's kind of like a callback to that thing. But it's not a winky callback at all. It's just something I think people would notice on a second watch. But when I'm in a theater, I pay better attention, even if there's drunk people sitting next to us. We'll talk about that after. But I had a good time with this. I embraced my femininity. and I gave the middle finger to the patriarchy. Fuck you guys. No. Yeah, I thought our performances here by our lead and everybody, but it's definitely a cathartic chick flick. I don't want to call it a chick flick because it's very much like a thriller.
Oh yeah, it's not a chick flick at all.
What I mean by chick flick is it's a movie made, in my opinion, for women to have catharsis and to have a message put out there that I think is it's important and it's relevant, and I don't know. We'll talk more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't understand people not liking the movie because I think that it has some important stuff to say about abuse of power, and anytime, I guess, like, just the fact that the women are the victims, you know, like, that's, like, immediately what makes people dislike a movie when it's, like, around that subject matter, and I think that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the movie a lot. Like, I had really a good time watching it. I thought that it was very engaging and very thrilling. I thought that there was some really good humor thrown in.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark comedy in this.
There is a lot of dark comedy, but I found it to be really fitting, and I think that everything makes sense. As you were talking about with, like, these callbacks, I think that there's things set up in the beginning of the film that have payoff at the end, and I always appreciate when movies do that because, you know, it's like not leaving any threads, right, left for interpretation or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought the performances were great from everybody. I think everyone did a really great job.
The film that this reminded me of, and I think that people are going to have a similar experience with it, so it's like, if you liked that one, you probably would like this, and if you didn't like that, you wouldn't like this, is Don't Worry, Darling. This is a very similar feel to me.
Yeah.
In how it's presented and the message that it has and the audience that it will appeal to.
It's a little bit more of like a modern take on that.
And that's like Olivia Wilde making her film.
Yeah.
And this is Zoe Kravitz making their film. And they're about, like, men with power who take advantage of women and gaslight them. And they're both, like, Hollywood starlets who have went through that system. And I definitely think this is, like, you know, a metaphor for their experience in Hollywood.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure of it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that people really... It sucks, you know, like, beautiful women get a lot of things, like, pretty privilege does exist, but there's a huge cost to it. And some women, you know, are able to justify it to themselves, but I think that, like, the majority of people, like, nobody wants to be taken advantage of and abused and, you know, used for their, just who they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I thought it was a really, like, it's an entertaining movie because of the catharsis. Yeah. Like, you really I felt very satisfied at the end. I was really happy with the ending.
Yeah, me too. I really liked the ending.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it.
I didn't expect it either. I didn't know that's what was coming, and I was like, oh, okay. That's nice.
There's, like, with most movies, and it's gonna be up to you whether or not this is too much or just enough or whatever, but there's conveniences, there's contrivances, there's definitely questions as to the validity of whatever. There's some, like, there's things at play here that I don't think have an explanation per se, but that's the world it is in. Right? It's not that it's science fiction or something, but I don't know what exactly I would call it, but something like that, to my knowledge, doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's, like, an element that's not
so
explained.
It's like, you either accept that or you don't, and it's like, if you're going to watch a film, I don't need an explanation for that. It would be a very silly critique to me to look at that and be like, that thing doesn't exist, therefore the movie's dumb. That would be so stupid to me. But there's some element in the film, and then there's a counter element in the film.
Well, and both of those things are very metaphorical, too. Like they,
True,
like
100%.
There's
Yeah.
symbolism behind those things. So even if you're not like, there's not a real life equivalent to what this is, like it still is important for the story, and it doesn't really matter. Like you just kind of accept that thing does that thing, and this thing does this thing, and
Yeah.
like that's part of the story.
I have no problem with that
Yeah,
at all.
I think that would be a really silly critique as well, because that's not the point. Like if the story was about specifically how that worked, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
if they're
then
trying to
I could
sell it to you more.
Right.
They don't try to explain it, which is great.
Exactly.
Because I
It's
don't
just-
need to know.
It's just, that's what it is. And so I think that's totally fine.
And there's
Yeah.
like as I said, there's a convenience to like the counter element. And
little
it's
bit,
like,
yeah.
and it's like, I don't care,
But not-
right?
not
It's just there. So that's what I'm saying. I think that once again, if you're vibing with a movie, you accept things and you roll with it. If you're not vibing with a movie, you start to break down and critique every little aspect, and you're like, that's stupid, and that's stupid, and that's stupid. You just a movie has maybe like 5-10 minutes. It's like first impressions. They have that real small window to get you on board, and if they've lost you, it is so hard to bring you back.
Yeah.
And then every little thing annoys you, as to where when you're vibing with it, if they can get you in that first 5 minutes, you start to allow other things that maybe in the past you wouldn't, where you'd be like, ah. So I never had any issues with anything. I totally liked where this went. I thought there was a lot of great moments. I think the performances, there's a very unlikely duo that I really enjoyed and never saw coming in a million years.
Well, and that's also, I love how the story plays out. I think that's also a very important part of
Yeah.
the character arcs, and it says a lot too about, like there's even kind of a speech given that addresses it as well, which I really like. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, all
It's
the
a good movie.
metaphors on hand here for me. Some people might think they're heavy-handed. I mean, I don't know how you approach them like any other way to make them less. Like, to me, it's like, that's fine. The way they're presented is like, it's entertaining and serves its purpose, and I get it, and it's not too on the nose for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could take little bits of the film out and be like, yeah, this felt a little silly in the moment or whatever, but overall, really good time. A very unique film,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Definitely a different film from this year. Didn't feel like anything else I saw this year.
Yeah, I agree.
So, if you liked Don't Worry, Darling, and you vibed with that, I think you would have a similar time here. Or like, it's almost like Don't Worry, Darling meets Get Out.
Yeah.
Like that's
Because
the
there
way.
is a more, like, I feel like Don't Worry, Darling doesn't have the thriller aspect as much. And this one really does, especially, like, in the second half of the movie. Like, once you are, like, deep into it.
Yeah.
I felt that was really ramped up.
There's a line in this that's said by our main character about halfway through the film, that when the film starts to come together, you reflect back on that moment and you're like, fuck. Like, she said that. Bet she's changed her mind now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So, like, those are great moments
Yeah.
for me because, you think one thing until you experience something and then
Yeah.
you're like, never mind.
I think I changed my mind.
Never mind. Yeah, I mean, Channing Tatum is very believably good in his role all around. I don't want to say too much about everyone else in this movie. Just want people to experience it. But yeah, I had no issues really with anything. Like the way everything played out, the way it was presented, the story as it was told to us, and how it all came together. All those pieces fit really well for me, and I just don't have really any complaints. So very good time. It's a fun mystery thriller with some unexpected dark comedy laced throughout in places where you wouldn't expect it. And it's a cathartic feminist movie for sure, but I don't think that should exclude men unless those men have fragile egos.
Yeah, or they maybe relate to other characters, and then they would be mad about it. But that's kind of what I was meaning.
How dare
where
they
I'm like,
present us in a
I feel like
negative
you
light.
have no like you would be fine with this unless you're bad.
No, I mean, you could hate this movie and be a great person.
No,
That's
course.
not
No,
what I'm saying at
not,
all.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying more like I hate the concept of it. That's more what I mean.
Once again,
the movie doesn't. You don't have to like any movie, for whatever reason.
Yeah. No, I mean, once again, the whole point of these reviews will always be the same thing. For me, it's always about like trying to find the audience this movie's for, to the best percentage that I can. If I can get through to that group of people that would like this, I'm hoping that's a high percentage of them will.
Yeah.
That's it.
And hopefully,
not every one of them's going to. You can fit all the criteria we just said,
and you could still
hate the movie. It's just, I think you have a very good chance of liking it. You have like a 75 to 90% chance of liking this movie if you resonate with all of those things.
And hopefully you don't have two very drunk people sitting next to you.
I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about it.
Having full-on conversations.
So yeah, we got there and it's assigned seating. And Kaylee texted because I went to the bathroom really quick before it started. 30 minutes. 30 minutes, guys. What's the longest amount of trailers you've sat through? Because the movie started at 4:30. But the movie didn't start till 5. 30 minutes. Usually it's like, at AMC, it's like 20. We've seen it as short as 15. We walked in, Deadpool was like 14. Because I walked in at 15 and it had started. And I was shocked because with the big movies, they usually play a ton of trailers. Right? Because they're trying to appeal to that wide audience. And then it's the smaller films that usually get less trailers because there's not as many people in there and they're trying to like get more turnover so there's less time spent with trailers. But this was 30 minutes. Anyways, we get there. I go to the bathroom really quick thinking I have no time. Shit, did I not know I had another 15 minutes? But Kayla texts me and she's like, I think people are in their seat. And I'm like, oh shit. So like I come in and you can see your seating beforehand when you buy the tickets, obviously. And we had seen 2 people had bought the opposing seats on our aisle because Kayla loves to sit at the edge of the theater on the end seat. And so we saw somebody had already bought those sides. So we were like, okay, they just got it backwards. So fuck it, we'll just sit in their seats. We had, we figured those were their seats, and I'm sure they were. But oh my god, they were so loud the entire film, like talking at the movie, talking at each other,
full volume,
full volume.
They weren't even trying to whisper because like sometimes you do have to say something to your, whoever you're with, but.
Oh, sure.
You always try to whisper or, like, say it, like, quietly when there's, like, a loud scene happening or something, so you're not, like, interrupting.
If I missed a piece of dialogue or if, like, something's happening that I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that person died. And
I think it's totally fine to have those kinds of conversations where they're not even conversations.
It's not conversations.
They're just, like,
the quick little,
like,
and I
exchanges.
put my mouth up to your ear, and I'm like...
But they were talking full volume.
Louder than we're talking right now.
Yeah.
And
they got up so many times to go to the bathroom. And at one point, the guy got up and left. And then he came back in and walked over to our side.
Which is longer.
And then was, like, standing on the steps and just said, like, the person that he was with, like, their name. It was just like Sharon or whatever, like really loud.
And he left like 3 different times, and I think
like,
he was getting drinks.
They were getting drinks like almost each. They were going to the bathroom and then getting drinks.
Yeah, so she would come back in, but every time she would like pull up her phone and kind of like flash it around for him, and it was like so bright.
A small theater too.
Very.
This was not a big theater. It was a small theater, and there was maybe there's probably besides the 4 of us at the top row, there was maybe 4 other people in the theater, I think. So it was not packed. It wasn't like confusing to where you sat. Like
And make no mistake about it, I have no problem talking to somebody. I am a very confrontational person, as Kaylee knows. But typically when I'm with her, I refrain from confrontation because I know how much it upsets her. And I knew, because of how loud and obnoxious these people were and how drunk they were, if I said one word to them, it was going to be the end of the movie. Because I knew they were going to start a fight. They were going to be real fucking aggressive. They just had it written all over them. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, do we come back for a later showing, which I didn't want to do? Do I say something, which would then also have that same outcome, because I'm sure they would continue to keep fighting with me and make it so uncomfortable that one of us would eventually have to leave. So I just kind of sat there and was just like, okay, maybe I've had worse people in the theater, so they're not the worst, but fuck, they were bad. They were so bad.
Awful etiquette. Horrible. Because the other thing, too, is that, like, they have those, dine-in, like, movie theaters, right? Where, like, you're, like, seated and eating food and, like, drinking. I haven't really been to one of those, but I assume that they're probably a little bit more, like... But
I've been to a few of them.
Though, 'cause, like,
no,
the
everyone's quiet as normal.
You're watching a movie. Like, it was funny. I almost shushed. I almost went, shh.
Did you?
Yeah, I almost did, but then I was like...
Oh, that would have been interesting.
I was just curious.
Because you were, like, telling me don't say anything. And I was like, ugh, fine.
Well,
so if you would have said something, I would have been like, really?
No, before I told you not to. Like, in the beginning, when they were talking a bunch, I was almost going to be like, shh. But then you were like... You said to me, like, they would be confrontational as well.
They will, 100%.
So I'm glad I didn't, because I'm not, like, equipped for that.
Well, anyway, so terrible.
Hopefully you don't have that experience.
Terrible people. But they were, like, really into the movie.
They were very into it.
They were laughing. They were, like...
Repeating stuff.
Yeah, somebody made a quote from a movie. I won't say what it was. But then the guy, like, had to announce the response to that. You'll know it when you see it, because there's no response to it in the movie. But he responded to it. It's a very famous movie quote from a very famous movie. That's a question. And then he answered that question very loudly, declaring he knew the line or something.
Like,
I don't know.
I get the reference.
I get the reference, everybody in the theater.
They were super into the movie, but, it's whatever. We were still able to enjoy the film.
She was a little iffy at first because it was like killing her buzz to a degree. She's like, I thought this was going to be a fun movie.
I couldn't hear what they were saying at all.
Oh, I heard every fucking word
I
they
could
said.
just hear the volume, but I couldn't hear what they were
I can't block voices out. I just can't do it. I'm incapable of doing it.
I think it's just because you were next to me and, like, I was on the end, and then, like...
No, you're like that. This has always been the case. You and, like, Oliver, my daughter, they have that ability where, like, you can you can read while people are having a conversation next to you. I cannot. I will only hear their conversation. I cannot read a word on the page.
Yeah.
Or if, like, I can't listen to music with words in it when I'm reading. I will just focus on the lyrics the whole time.
Yeah, I would never.
But my daughter, she can.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Anyway, that's that. Blink twice. I say go for it.
Yeah.
It's a good one. And IMDb, it's 7.0 right now.
Oh,
so
good.
I think people are enjoying it. Anyway, very impressive directorial debut from Zoe Kravitz. I'd like to see another. So get to it. But Batman 2 first. All right.